We've all been poisoned by bad tests, as students ourselves and as teachers. The knee-jerk reaction seen all over social media is to rejoice at the thought of leaving behind the long, arduous, static, rote, standardized testing. Of course, if we're ever dedicating kids' time to assessment that doesn't help us teach, doesn't help them learn, and doesn't reflect what we've really been studying, it's a bad test. Let's leave that horribly narrow and punitive definition of assessment behind. Focus on the truly infinite, informal, formative means of assessment that enhance learning. If I say, I care about my kids, and I want to strictly focus on meaningful, contextualized learning, so I'm not going to assess at all. I have great intentions, but I've missed the point. If we remove assessment in its entirety, we can't objectively justify what we're teaching when it's time to move on. Our differentiation becomes aimless guesswork, and resource modifications are done for their own sake. Students can feel directionless without feedback. Misconceptions go without being addressed, and at a time like this, in an uncertain, unfamiliar climate, if we take out check-ins, the heart of assessment, we're pulling farther away from our kids. So instead of asserting how glad we are to have no more tests, let's give ourselves some credit for the constant, tiny evaluations we're administering every day and shed light on the wide scope of what assessment really is, what it really looks and sounds like to gauge learning and identify student needs. Margot Gottlieb, I just love her. She's a champion for multilingual education, and she talks about assessment as, of, and for learning. This phrase reassures us that testing or assessing is not a distraction from our relationships with kids, but that assessment is key to making our interactions, meaningful. So as learning, that's when the activity, game, discussion, the actual processing component of learning becomes the assessment. You're listening to the precision of language. You're investigating the content of responses and peer commenting. Note the types of questions that are being raised and the level of depth kids are exploring, or maybe not yet exploring. Assessment as learning is what you're doing anytime you are actively monitoring and engaging with your students. Now it becomes effective assessment when you take those notes and modify instruction, whether that's the immediate future, like changing the example you present next, or changing the following day, month, even a nugget of wisdom that you file away for next year. Assessment of learning. So now as the teacher or the self-reflective student, I'm engaging in some separate application of the learning to demonstrate my current proficiency. Remember, no one is suggesting students need to answer 10 questions or create an essay or complete a packet to show what they know. Okay, teachers are a creative species. Let's use that. Finally, assessment for learning. This refreshing perspective cues us to the innate relationship of teaching and assessing, learning and evaluation, the balance that creates intentional instruction. To live the learning cycle, we have to teach and assess with purpose and care. I hope you're encouraged in this new setting of learning to experiment with quality forms of embedded assessment. Happy learning.